Good evening and welcome to the Jacksonville Environmental and Appearance Advisory Committee. I hope everybody had a fabulous Thanksgiving, and the last time we met was in October, so it's been a little while since we've all seen one another. Tonight we have joining us Greg Mishaw, who's the city engineer, and Jeanette Hall, who is with Erosion Control, so they'll be presenting here shortly. At this time, do we have a motion to adopt the agenda from our October meeting?
I make a motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, it'll be adopted as written. You all have the minutes for tonight's meeting in front of you. They're also emailed out earlier this week. Do we have a motion to adopt, correct, or reject the minutes for tonight? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. The minutes will be adopted as written. As y'all know, attendance is on page 12. We did not have a meeting last month, so that does not count. I know everybody was worried that count against, since there was no meeting, that does not count against you. At some point, you may want to just make sure your attendance is right. Other than that, are you ready to get
Absolutely.
started? All right.
Absolutely. Well, we too want to say, hope y'all had the holiday and that you're looking forward to these new holiday periods. And Patrick Carroll is going to talk to you about some sites in the season and later about how y'all can participate in that, and even some people who might be watching this as it is. At your last meeting, you had another person who was part of the City of Jacksonville's Public Services Engineering Division speak to you. That was Pat Donovan Potts. Stormwater is but one of the items that City Engineer Greg Mishaw oversees. He has a wide variety of activities. All the city projects come under him. All those activities come under him. The construction management, project management, all those things happen in there. And tonight he's going to talk to you particularly about erosion and sediment control. We want to also point out, in addition to Jeanette, Deanna Young is here, and Deanna Young is a projects manager for us with the City of Jacksonville, and she puts the rubber on the road as to what Greg says to happen there as it was, and she actually goes out and manages many of the projects that are there. But Greg, we welcome you folks here and can't wait to have some of this conversation about this wonderful idea of an erosion and sediment control recognition.
Okay. Well, we're glad to be here. We should have coordinated our speeches because he just took my thunder. Yes, but again, I am Greg Mishaw. I'm with the Engineering Division, and we do a lot of different things. We watch over several regulatory programs. We're responsible for the stormwater program, which includes permitting. And we're also in charge of the sedimentation and erosion control program, of which Jeanette Hall, who's been with the city for 10 years, is our chief erosion and sedimentation inspector. And I don't know, I guess it was a couple of months ago, Jeanette came to us and said, I have an idea. She said, I think that, we should maybe think about recognizing some of our contractors, our developers, our builders who do a good job with sedimentation and erosion control, and recognize them, maybe award them to incentivize them to keep doing it, and to possibly incentivize some others in the industry so that we can all have cleaner water, because sediment, when it escapes the site, it goes into our waterways. And so we said, well, we think that's probably a pretty good idea. And so we talked about it a bit internally, and we've got management said, well, we think that's a good idea, but why don't you go talk to the committee and see if they think it's a good idea. And so that's what we're here to do. We're going to tell you a little bit about some of the thoughts we have. Jeanette's going to do that, and then we're going to ask you whether you think it's a good idea. So with that, I will let Jeanette tell you a little bit about the program.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you all for having me here. Are you clicking?
Or do you want to click?
Go ahead. We have, what we want to talk about tonight is a recognition program for erosion sediment control for our contractors and developers. The EPA lists construction site runoff as the #1 pollutant to public waters. Construction site runoff is erosion, and that's defined as any movement of soil by wind or water. Here in the city of Jacksonville, we have over 50 active construction sites, and that's a lot of runoff that could potentially run into our waters. We have a local program that's authorized by the state of North Carolina. We've had this program in the city for over 25 years now, and it is administered by Public Services Department, and that's Wally Hanson, our interim Public Services Director. Greg is the Senior Civil Engineer. Mike Moore is our Construction Specialist, and myself as the Inspector. And Development Services, Tom Anderson is our Plan Reviewer. What we do in the local program, we review and approve erosion control plans to ensure compliance with state and federal regulations, and we issue land disturbance permits. We also conduct weekly inspections of every site that is active, and we take enforcement measures when we need to. The idea that we have for a recognition program is to potentially reward the contractors that go above and beyond and do a good job in their erosion control. Everybody has to do something, but some of our contractors go above and beyond. They show outstanding examples. They take proactive measures. They just do a good job.
Talk about some of the pictures.
Oh, our pictures, yeah. Sorry. These two pictures that we have up here are, the one on this side is a construction entrance. Every site is supposed to have a construction entrance. All vehicles entering and leaving the site have to go over the rock pad to prevent any mud from tracking off the site onto the public roadways. The other side is the silt fence. I'm sure you've all seen the black fence all over town. That's to prevent any mud from the disturbed site running off the site.
And those are good installations.
Those are good installations. Some of our program goals, we want to encourage the contractors to go above and beyond. We want to promote uniformity, consistency on every job site. We want to develop a strong partnership with our contractors and developers and make them want to do more. We want to make them want to do better. This picture that we have up here is a ditch that runs off into a creek, and they have actually definitely gone above and beyond with the straw and the seeding to promote good growth. Ground cover is one of the best ways to prevent anything from running off a site. If you can get it to turn green, put grass on it, that's the best way to prevent anything from running off site. What we would do for considering who would get the award, we would do quarterly reviews of all the inspection reports. We would go through all the reports to make sure. When we go through all of the reports, we could potentially award several sites during each quarterly review. Several sites could receive the award, and several of our sites could receive the award many times during the year. So we would have to break it down into 3 different categories, because each site, the big sites, more than 5 acres, small sites, less than 5 acres, and individual lots for the home builders. They all take different levels of effort to maintain them. To be eligible, the site would have to stay in compliance. We want no sediment leaving their sites. They are required to keep self-inspections weekly. We want to make sure that they're doing their inspections correctly and in a timely manner, and that we've had no citizen complaints on their sites. We also want to make sure that if we're going to award a recognition for a contractor, that he doesn't have another site down the street that's a complete mess. We want to make sure he's in compliance all over town. Some of the things that we thought of the award being would be a sign to put on their site that recognized them as a good contractor for erosion sediment. We had talked about recognition at council meetings. For some of our better or more repeat winners, maybe a G10 spot, something like that. Recognition in the newspaper. So those would be some of the things that we would recognize them for.
Maybe even put them on G10 if they are repeat winners. Yeah.
Repeat winners. that's pretty much the design or the idea that we had, that I'd like to do something for the ones that do go above and beyond. We wanted to bring it to you guys, see what you thought. If you like the idea, then our next step would be to further pursue it with management and see what we could do. What do you think?
Well, let me add to that before we start the conversation. When the stormwater program was initially envisioned, there was a thought about doing something similar to this for folks that had good stormwater management at their site. And the idea of the carrot rather than the stick is here what we're showing here tonight, by recognizing outstanding examples. And that's what you folks have done with the recognition committee, of recognizing outstanding recycling efforts, of outstanding personal and residential appearance and business appearance and things such as that. So it falls right into that genre. And in looking at this, some of the staff thought, well, gee, right in the Clean and Green program, this erosion and control, that's obviously one of the building blocks of what construction's all about. And there could be an award program that recognizes this. Many of you are familiar with the LEEDS program for, the energy efficiency and adaptive reuse of the sites and stuff. But that's a pretty expensive type of operations that you don't see a lot of LEEDS building around here. But what if you were to also have a Clean and Green recognition that would say, as the site was under construction, that they took construction management techniques that kept the litter down from going over to another site or did something such as that, and that they would get some sort of award for doing that. So we have this award that might, if you folks like this idea, would be advanced. You'd have an award potentially for doing construction, and then potentially for after they occupy the building, that they maintain their building in such a way they don't blow the grass out in the street. They're actively involved in recycling. They do things that we think that good corporate citizens should do that are clean and green, that this committee and others can help with providing some standards that we would actually meet, and that they could literally have 3 plaques lined up in that building after it got put together that said, look, I have a great site, it was constructed well, and we're continuing to operate it well as it was there. So with that as a mindset of this, what do you think of her idea of doing something that would recognize that they did an outstanding job of keeping sedimentation and erosion from not leaving the site?
I think it's awesome.
I think it's a great
I mean,
idea.
I like going down Western Boulevard. As much construction, not Western, Henderson, as much construction is on that street, it still looks okay. I mean, it's a great street to go down. There's not things flying around. There's not things all over the place. The way they do the ditches with the grass on it, I think that's awesome. I like the idea. I really do.
Would it be a once a month award?
I think the idea that the
Quarterly.
staff had was looking quarterly at how people had performed, and then I think the nice thing about what the staff had come up with is that if you meet this criteria and you don't have any other sites that are bad sites, you could win more than one. It could be a good thing there, really.
Would it be just one construction site quarterly, or would there be more than one
If you met the
winner?
criteria, what they have proposed, if you meet the criteria, you get recognized.
So there could be 4 or 5 different
right.
ones that get awarded.
And isn't that what we really want to do, is to
Right.
see people who admittedly, if they don't perform, let's talk about that part, she has to act. If there's sedimentation getting off that site, she gives them some warning and things of that nature that I don't understand all the nuances of, but she's got a procedure that she goes through. And that clearly somebody's going to get tapped if they're doing bad. Why not recognize the ones that, that, as she said, go a little bit beyond, that do great things there?
Well, I think it will encourage them to keep improving and keeping up the good work, but it's also another way they're putting their name out there, because somebody going down Henderson Extension they say, oh, look, this is being built and they've been awarded for this, and this. That's just another notch in their belt that,
Puts them in competition with each other.
right.
It's like
For
promoting
other
their business.
clients
That's
to,
what I was thinking.
right.
If I was a contractor,
Use
it
them as
couldn't
a-
get
yeah.
any better. That's
Right.
advertising. It would promote their business. And then too, they could have like an aftercare program, you would call it. After the building is built, and then to have an aftercare program to keep that building in one shape. So to me, it's a win-win situation.
And you're promoting it right from the beginning all the way through, so. I
How
think it's
would
a
you
good
try
idea.
to define this, the big contractor that has maybe 5 or 6 multiple sites, that it was owned or operated by the same man or same business? How would you, what rules are, would have to be thought well enough that the small contractor wouldn't be hurt because he only had one, maybe a single house dwelling or whatever that he was doing. There would have to be some type of regulation about how it's awarded due to that, and I'm sure you've probably given that a lot of thought.
I do, in the course of my job, when I do erosion control inspections, every site gets its own inspection. It's not per,
It doesn't matter how many owns
it
it.
doesn't make any difference. What I found is that the larger the contractor is and the more sites he has, the more crews he has actually doing the work. So you could have a contractor that potentially has 10 crews out there in the field working on 10 sites. Each of those sites are individual with their own crew.
Right.
So it may all be under the same name, but it's the same, you know.
But your opinions were based on sites, not
site,
who
not
owns
per-
those
yeah.
sites, but sites as
And we
well.
have a lot of, we have several contractors here in town that work for different developers. So while this site has this developer and this contractor, the same contractor will be over on another site with a different developer, so.
And I also want to say that, you know, one of the things, we don't necessarily want to just limit it to the contractors and the home builders. One of the other things we're talking about is also recognizing the developer, who is, you know, key to, you know, making or encouraging his contractor to do well. So that, you know, an award like this for a developer, I would think, like you say, would be, it's golden. You know, I'm a responsible, you know, developer.
I could see it doing a lot of good for single-family homes because we have several neighborhoods where they're building homes and they have several builders in the same neighborhood. If they're trying to sell their house and they get to put the sign out that says they're a recognized builder, that's a selling point for them. So they would all, I would think, compete to be able to do that.
Competition for him.
So do you find that the out-of-town people or the local builders, who does a better job?
Ooh, there's this.
That's a tough one because we have quite a few very, very good local builders and I mean, that's a tough one. Some of the ones that come from out of town are more used to stricter regulations, so they come in right from the get-go being very strict, and those are easy for me. So.
I think this potentially could be a program that once it gets started, there might be some other recognitions that grow out of it. And that as this gets more and more developed and refined, as mentioned, you might recognize a developer who tends to, every site they have is done well because they want it done right. And some, by absence of an award, might be identified as, even though they might hire different contractors to do the work, it's done in such a way that they're not eligible for an award. And, you know, one can draw their own conclusions, as you said, if they start listing them and, you know, if we make some sort of publication and we put it on the web and we have it there showing these developers have associated themselves with excellent sites.
This might be silly, but I mean, if you have signs on the actual sites while it's being built, is there like a smaller, like if you put a sign out at the site, would there be like a smaller plaque for their home headquarters office that they could get also?
All that's in development.
Yeah, I don't think we've gotten
all
that far.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
As our leader likes to say, this is Jello. You know, at this point, you know, Richard loves to
I like
tell
pudding
us
better.
that. Yeah, pudding, and this is
Need a little bit more substance.
But this is you know, that's why you're here. They want to sincerely hear your thoughts about whether you think this would
I
be a
like
good
it.
idea.
I think
And
it's a good idea.
again, the concept that's now being kind of from Jeanette's emphasis of this activity of the carrot versus the stick is to say, you know, maybe we should rethink that we had thought about with stormwater, bring that back, and then maybe award in such a way to put together a program that might award clean and green status, even for businesses that are already built, that we didn't have a chance to look at how they were done in the past, but we can say at least now they're operating a commercial site in such a way that's clean and green, that they're taking care of cigarette butts and they're taking care of litter. They're doing things in such a way that deserves recognition.
So I do have a question. This might be a little bit deeper than just an award, but so when a builder goes to a site and he's going to start, he gets a list of these are the things that we need to do to control the erosion, right? Or he knows probably there's like a list or standard
Before
he starts.
Before any of them come in and can build in Jacksonville, they have to, if the site is at least an acre, they are state required to have an erosion control plan.
Okay.
And that plan comes through Development Services, and we go over it to make sure that they meet all of the state standards. Once it's approved, they've got a blueprint for exactly what they need to do on their site. It is a minimum. If they go above and beyond, which is very easy to do, then that's what we want to reward.
So then you have a separate list of like, these are things that you can do to go above and beyond. So if there was a new builder and they didn't know for whatever reason, that would be something you could provide them with to say, this is something, a new initiative that the city is taking. We know that you know how to do these things, but these are some things we'd like to also see you implement, even though they're not like a law or requirement.
Much is it like, for instance, you clean the table, but that's the minimum requirement. But sterilizing it and getting in there with the Clorox and rubbing it down real good, that's great. So I think that's what the kind of the scale they're looking at. There's a minimum requirement. You got to keep sedimentation on your site. But if you do, as they said, some extraordinary features that go above and beyond, that's what you really want to recognize.
For every measure that keeps, for every, what they call a BMP, a best management practice, for every BMP that keeps sediment on your site, there's 10 different ways to install it. Some of them are better than others. So the ones that put it in at the bare minimum, it should hold, maybe it will, and then there's ways to
Ensure.
fix it that you can be certain it's always
And
gonna
our builders, are they open to counsel or listening to ideas when you meet with them? If you go out and you say, this is something that I noticed is a red flag, here are some ways that you can mitigate, this erosion control.
Our builders out there,
When you're talking to them, are they open to your suggestions and you can provide that, and then you go back and see that?
usually they very much are. I try to, I've been doing this for a little while, so one of the things that I look at is anything that will make it easier and cheaper for the contractors and the builders, they're more likely to do. So I do a lot of research and try to follow up with a lot of education on what different new products out there that will make things cheaper and easier for the builders. And I think they have learned over the years of dealing with me that sometimes I do have pretty good ideas. I'm not always out there to make them mad, so.
Well, that's good. So you're a great resource to them, as well as an encouragement for them doing their job and being awarded to continuing.
I like to think so.
One of the other things I would say is about going above and beyond. Even though there is a plan, it's developed, it's approved, and they put it in, plans sometimes don't always work. One of the other things that makes them an extraordinary contractor is how they respond to a plan that doesn't quite work. Are they going to do just enough to get by to meet the minimum performance standards, or when they see that there's a problem, are they going to go above and beyond to resolve that problem? And so that's another thing we'd be looking at.
That falls into the being proactive on it. If they actually go out and look for a potential problem and fix it before it becomes a problem.
Well, you just mentioned, just so they know where the stick is, there's some fines and actions. You can actually close them down if.
Our biggest stick, you probably carry better than I can, but our biggest stick is that we give them I'll call it a warning. We let them know that things aren't going well here, and we give them a period of time to come into compliance. If they don't do that, then we put them in a notice of violation. And what that does is it suspends all other inspections that they would normally have on their site. So let's take, for instance, if it's a home builder and he needs a plumbing inspection, well, sorry, you're in a notice of violation. The plumbing folks aren't coming out to look at your site. So he's got a house that nothing's happening on, and time is money. So that's our biggest stick. We can ultimately go to fining, but And more often than not, that's what.
But
does
it's in the
trick.
arsenal.
Yes, it is in the arsenal.
Does he complete this project before you go in? Because sometime after they complete the project and then you come in and say it has to be ripped out.
But now they're dealing, we're talking about erosion and control right now.
Oh, okay.
Not inspections inside the building.
Basic site work, and when they start pushing dirt around and clearing the land and getting ready to build, that's what we're looking at. And that's when they create the biggest issues if they're not doing it right. It's with the runoff.
That
and
includes
erosion.
the trees.
Some of the low impact ideas, a lot of our plans and a lot of our contractors have in the past, they'll come in and clear, if they've got a 25-acre site, they'll come in and clear trees on 25 acres. And it takes them 3 years to get to the other end of the project. Where with low impact, some of the low impact ideas, if you're going to be working in the front and doing this section, only clear that section. Leave those trees until you get ready to go clear that portion of the site. That minimizes the exposure, the dirt being exposed and having the potential to run off. So that's the kind of thing that we like to promote. If you're not going to be actively working that portion of the site, leave it alone, let it grow.
So, Madam Chairman, it seems as though there seems to be at least a spoken consensus that you kind of like the idea. Is there some sort of, do you all believe this is kind of something you'd like to see adopted? Do you have a recommendation to make to senior management about advancing this or anything like that?
I think you should
I
go
think it
for it.
would be a great thing to advance. Go for it.
It's a necessity.
Okay. Well, I think we got the answer we wanted.
Yes.
And these were some good. If you have ideas and things, and you think of this later, and look at the big idea too. I think this is going to come back before you. And what will happen now, as mentioned, is that they'll go for some, senior management review of this matter. Staff will be working on some machinations of it, and bring back for you folks to look at and see. And the council will obviously have to sign off on something like this.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and we appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, toward the end of that, since Greg does oversee this next section,
I was going to say, you're going to torture them and make them stop.
yeah, I'm gonna make it. Is that at the last meeting, you folks had Pat Donovan Potts speak to you about some of that, and she asked you to consider some concepts and do some things such as that. And we're just wondering if there's any follow-up to that or anything else that you had from that presentation. I think that Carla did an excellent job in the minutes of describing, some of the narrative that was discussed at that section. And there's no requirement that you have any item, but you just wanted to have have the capability this time of having a conversation at this. Or is there a subcommittee you'd like to assign this to, or something to that effect? Any of those things, or no further comment at this time, and we'll just have another report at the next time that's Pat's turn to come and speak.
I have a question. I was wondering, are you asking if I can ask a question to him about what she spoke on? Is that what you're saying?
Right now, you can ask a question. Of course you can ask a question.
Well, I have an idea, but it's kind of in the form of a question as well. She had shared about stormwater drain off, and I look around my neighborhood at the drains, and some of them, I don't know, we live in an old neighborhood, but there's probably, I don't know how many feet of dirt, because you look at that little pipe that runs underneath the road and you only see like that much of the pipe, so you know that there must be a lot of dirt. And I was wondering, is there ever a time of the year that even if the neighbors wanted to do it, someone from the city could come and pull up that grate and you could just dig out the dirt yourself, like if a neighborhood wanted to take it on? Because I'm sure with all that dirt, that's just more sediment running into the river. And it seems like if it was done just once a year in a neighborhood, I mean, not that every neighborhood would want to do that, but I've never seen someone in my storm drain with a shovel to dig out that dirt, and I just thought that might be an easy thing, even if it was only every 5 years that it was dug out. Like that might be a.
She lives in the Bayshore area,
Ah, okay.
where things are very low.
Yes, it is very low. I think it's something that we could coordinate. We would certainly have to look at the area and see what the sheer act of digging out the sediment would do, because again, once you start digging that stuff out, unless you take extra care You're going to probably generate some sediment that next time it rains, it's going to be suspended and go down, down the creek. So you may have to do some things besides just dig it out. You might have to put in some rock checks to try to hold the sediment back. There's any number of things you might have to do. On the surface, it doesn't sound, it sounds like it's something worth thinking about that we could do. It's, I guess our streets department can always use the help because they're.
I'm not trying to get
We might say it in that area, in your neighborhood, and several others that have the similar situation. One of the things for which the city sought to get some grant funds for were something, I think they may still use this, maybe a brand name called storm scepters or something, where you insert in those old storm drains this device that actually lets the sediment be built up in such a way that you do go get it out at a later time, but it holds more of it and provides some filtering as a result of it. They were very pricey little devices. Has that changed, or?
I think they're still fairly expensive.
They are, but there are several things that you can use, several measures that can be taken to protect anything from getting in. But I think what she's talking about is getting out what's already there.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, they're filters, if you will. That's what they are.
Once you have it cleaned out, then you'd put a filter in that would make it easier to maintain for the future. In listening to Pat and talking to Pat, which I do quite often, one of her big things is, when it comes to these storm sewers with the grates, one of the biggest things you can do is not blow the leaves into them. We have untold cases where she'll roll up on somebody and they're blowing those leaves down in those drains. Well, that's two things. It clogs up the drainage system, and then at the same time, those leaves eventually start breaking down, and that's organics that end up in our waterways that help deplete oxygen. So that's one of the, I guess you could say, maintenance features or pre-maintenance that you can do to help prevent those storm drains from being clogged.
Let me assure you, this group does not like to see things blown into the street, nor the things go down the storm drain.
Yes.
Other than stormwater.
But there's still a lot of people that, commercial landscapers and that cut grass, that's blowing it in the street.
And then you could go right back to the awards. I mean, we could start going to landscapers and giving them.
Well, that was one of the conversations about this, was to be candid with you. We're trying to carrot of those things. Consequently, if you see a contractor blowing in the street, you can call engineering and they'll check into that. And particularly, Pat's caught several in the act of doing that and warned them as to the consequences of what their unintended pollution activity has.
Unintended.
And one of the things I failed to say at the beginning was, Jeanette brought this to us, but in the larger scheme of clean and green, we see this as one of the components, as Glenn spoke about. And so we've already talked about a little bit with, other things that we can do to, make that bigger program that he was talking about. So, and that's one of them.
I am personally, talk about the blessings of Thanksgiving and what you're thankful for. I'm certainly thankful to be associated with a city that saw as a moral responsibility from its elected leaders, those words spoken, to help do something to clean up the river after the pollution that was clearly there. And that environmental sensitivity has pervaded through many other parts of the city. We're not a perfect place. We do things and we wish we had other resources that they could do more. But at its heart, the idea of having an environmentally friendly place that try to do things to protect the habitat is sincere and runs through this city. And we're glad the reason of your being a committee is in root of that and the legacy that you bring from the past committees. So, all of that adds together for this group. Didn't mean to quiet them that way.
Processing.
I'm just thinking, what type of bonus did the city give you for coming up with such a great idea? I hope it would be.
Let's see it get adopted. We do have that. Well, is there any other comments you wish to make about that? Then we'll let them escape then and do that part.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we appreciate it. Thank you. Okay,
All right.
these are good things. Well, Madam Chairman, if we would, I'll just continue there into the part about the committee work plan.
Sure.
And at your last meeting that we held, obviously, you adopted the plan, and it's included in the agenda. And of course, it was presented it was actually approved at the September meeting, forgive me. And and it was presented at the 19th when
Right.
you made the presentation. And you might want to talk about the big dream, and I think that you'll be pleased with some things that happened here with the Education and Outreach Committee that they have to share with you.
Okay. Our big dream that we came up with for those who weren't there the night of at the city council meeting, or table discussion, whatever, however you want to word it, was dealing with curb litter, reducing curb litter. And as you've heard Glenn say before, there are certain sections, like his favorite is 17 and Cheney, where people just flick the cigarette butts out. So, and there's other locations throughout Jacksonville that you've all probably seen it. So we wanted to do something to start encouraging the Swat a Litter Bug program. So I don't know if everybody already knows what that is, but basically you can use your cell phone these days, and you take a picture of the license plate, you send that in, and then every month Highway Patrol sends out letters to these individuals regarding when, where, how they were littering. And another way we wanted to encourage to get rid of the curb litter was maybe placing signage, not permanently, but at these various locations, encouraging people not to throw stuff out the window. And it's not just cigarette butts, it's, people throwing their fast food stuff out the window, or somebody walking and dropping their trash because they all think it's somebody else's job to pick it up. So, you have anything you want to add to that?
I think you've encompassed it.
All right. So, do we need a
No, I mean that's
the group, or we just?
I think you're going to see.
Okay.
I think you're going to see that they're reacting to it as it was. Well, toward the end of that, about the work plan, you remember that the first task that you had was merely the promotion of Clean and Green and bringing awareness to it. And this has principally been advocated by your recognition committee and by your education and outreach committee as it was there. And I think that this task, of which now has been presented to the city council, seemed to have good approval and reaction there to it. Your second task was to advocate action, to bring the citizens and provide a vehicle from which they can actively do. We've had a little bit of, we wanted to have some more cleanup type activities and such there, and we ran into a few obstacles in that, but we've got something planned for the spring now that I think will really show this as a good task as it was. But we're very thankful for the adoptive programs, and that we've seen a remarkable increase in the number of programs that have a number of people who have adopted things. Miss Betty sent a personal letter to some Boy Scout groups and had several of them decide that they wish to become involved in the adoptive programs. She was hoping for more streets, but they got parks. But they're happy campers,
But you've
and
done
so
a fabulous job getting people. I mean, it was like a little domino effect. Yeah,
Absolutely.
It was one after the next.
And we've seen some other things that have happened toward that. And then, of course, task 3, and this one's principally assigned to the tree board, and that's to make sure that Tree City USA flag is kept fresh every year, and that we do those things, and that currently the tree board is looking at a major revision of the memorial program. And we're hoping to have that back to you folks back at your, hopefully, by perhaps your February meeting as it is. And so the work schedule was the concept there that you folks adopted and said you wanted to do, and right now we're proceeding along with it. That means that your next meeting as a full committee now will be in February. But in January, what we want to do is that we want to make sure your subcommittees have time to meet. Have pity on the staff. We can't all meet at 6 o'clock on the normal meeting night that we would normally meet for this time, but we can certainly meet one group at 5, another group at 6, and something like that as it was, or have some shared times. I mean, some committee members said they like meeting in the morning, and some committee members like meeting in the evening as such there, so we can accommodate a variety of schedules for that. and to move forward from it. And Madam Chairman, what we were hoping for as a result of this is that we could have some concept now of the committees of saying, for instance, Education Outreach might say, here's a kind of a generalized time we'd like to meet, or have them have some conversation amongst themselves following this meeting and such there to present that. Recognition, they've had a kind of a tradition of when they might meet, and that we can certainly work on. The tree board has said that's a group that seemed to have been more flexible in their capability of times to meet. And the appearance and partnerships planning subcommittee, we're so happy to have Ms. Smith back with us at the table, and that to let her group with her people and say, here are some good times for us.
So can we just put the chairs of each of these committees to contact their members?
I think that'd be wonderful.
Get an answer, and then they let yourself, myself, one of us know.
Right, and Suzanne has indicated she wishes to attend some of these. So I mean, again, if we meet it all at the same time, she nor I have found the capability to clone ourselves yet. So
that's probably a good thing.
So to the point, it would be good if they kind of met separately, and then that way also you allow people that have schedules that say, hey, I can meet at this time, but this time makes it a little more difficult to me, to choose a committee that might more mesh with their scheduling as it is there too. So yes, that is something that very much can be done afterwards, or the committee chairs can do. We just wanted to address that as it was. So that's what I have, Madam Chair.
Perfect. Ready to go to the...
Absolutely.
All right. We'll do the subcommittee reports. The tree board, as we've told you in the past, April 25th, and will be Arbor Day, and it's going to be at Wooten Park. We'll get you more details as we get closer and we start finalizing who will be performing and all that kind of stuff. And as Glenn noted a minute ago, we are really trying hard to revise the memorial program, and we've got a lot of stuff in works. We just got to get it finalized. So that's all I've got on that one. Pat, you want to update us on the recognition?
They're still taking nominations for Outstanding Residential and Business Appearance Awards, and they also would like to look into your holiday, turning pictures into homes and businesses for the holiday decorations, and maybe vote on that in January.
Okay.
And have it handed out February meeting.
And to facilitate that, we'll put on our city webpage, on the front page there, we'll have a place where people can email nominations and pictures. Send in your neighbors, send in your house, do things like that.
So residential and commercial.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, there was a great deal of conversation that took place about wanting to recognize some outstanding commercial locations that have decorated too.
Right. Thank you. Linda, would you like to update us?
My update is that I will call my committee and we will meet.
Okay.
I have a question. Is there any time if we decide we want to meet in the morning, there's always a room available?
You call us, we'll make something happen.
You didn't know you had it like that, did you?
That's what we'll do.
And Betty, do you have any updates?
We met earlier today, the Education and Outreach Planning Subcommittee. We talked about taking the adopted program concept into different organizations and businesses, and committee members talking to them about the adopted program and being involved in that. That's something we're going to start getting the materials together to do and start setting that times up to do that. We are also going to concentrate in the near future on the cigarette butt reduction program on the streets. We're going to look into getting the word out through different social medias, Facebook, Twitter, the city website, signs on the streets, the little temporary signs, maybe putting them up for a certain period and then moving them to another area that has problems with the cigarette butts. And we're also talking about trying to find ways to get citizen participation involved in the cigarette butt reduction.
Very good.
On behalf of Mrs. Betty for his outreach, I want to thank her for supporting the youth empowerment program. She had someone to come out to show recycling. The kids was very, very excited. It was something that they had never seen done before. I took pictures, and she got with the proper heads, and she made it happen. And I thank her.
Good job. All right. Just recently, I guess what I'd be called a member of the planning
Yes.
board. So just to give you a brief update of some things that are taking place here in Jacksonville, the mall, they're getting ready to start a 4,500 square foot addition. And they're also going to start doing out parcels there in front of the mall. Zaxby's restaurant will be, they've purchased a lot on Western Extension between what is that, Longhorn? Yeah,
Yes.
Longhorn Steakhouse and Marine Federal. So that'll be in there. And Dunkin' Donuts, I think this has been
Yes.
been working on this for quite some time, but I'm sure you all know the one out here on 17, how congested it is if you ever want to go there in the morning time. But they are in the process of that'll be getting rerouted, the ingress and egress of that. So I think that was, and their big thing the planning board is wanting to talk about and work toward is something that will attract people to come to Jacksonville, other than a family member being in the military or just family members being here. They're trying to come up with something that would make people want to come here. So I will keep you guys posted on that discussion.
And I think this is the great part about the cross-pollination, from having a person on the planning board, and of course Ms. Key's husband was the person before that served on that, is that really allows you to have that connection in there. And the idea is the planning advisory board becomes less of a group that just reviews plans, but becomes more strategic in its conversations about what it does. So these are all good things.
Does anybody else have any comments or anything they would like to share? All right.
Well, I'll just real fast.
No.
Okay.
Just kidding.
To give an update on the street trees, you all know what the street trees have looked like, and you, of course, heard Dr. Woodruff speak prior to about what his idea was, and he showed you that he was inspired by the Morehead City example, and he said that you saw the plans that had been drawn up by Kate, our horticulturist, and Ms. Perkins, and these were the ideas to go. And this was the first iteration of that, and it's right across the street here, as you can clearly see, across from City Hall. And there now have been 5 of them put out there, and all the merchants have reacted favorably to having them out there in front of their businesses and such there. And now they want to put these across on the City Hall side of the street to replace the trees that are part of that now with this type of planting as it was there. So this will be relatively low maintenance. It's and it will certainly kind of, the trees were looking a little ragged, some of them, and this will really help as it was there too.
Very good.
So we wanted to bring you up to date with those things.
Thank you.
That's one of the trees being taken out. It is gone.
And the trees, the part on they're plowing.
Oh, good. Thank you. On the Beirut Memorial Grove, I hope all of you have
Very
seen the
busy out
construction
there,
is there. They think they're far enough ahead that they'll soon be able to start planting the trees. As we have mentioned to some other committees, and I forget whether we did it to the committee as a whole, but they're going to put an irrigation system in out there. And we know the pump and the well's been installed and the irrigation's there, and that'll really help because it is the contractor's responsibility to keep those trees going for at least a year. The city council at its last meeting approved the maintenance agreement. The city will maintain that after the DOT's warranty period expires and such there, and be responsible for that site. As to the site that's up here on, it'll be part of the Freedom Fountain Flag Garden. And of course you heard the presentation about the plans for down there on 17 South and what we all call in front of DOT and the DMV down there as it was. So all that's advancing. You heard it first here at this table.
Who takes care of the maintenance of the memorial now, the memorial area?
That is the Marine Corps does it, and it had been under, I want to be careful how I say it, it had been under the training group that was part of Camp Johnson. And effective at a date that I don't remember, do you remember what it is, since Fernando's what helped us bring this? But there's a date that it occurs that no longer will the training group be responsible for it, because they're under Quantico and not under, MCI East and all those things. And so it now will go back into headquarters, and MCI East will be responsible for it. And so that's going to be an interesting transition.
He definitely needs a pickup. Since they had the memorial that in front of the wall, and there's no lights anymore. The lights are covered with that high leaves, and the sidewalks are all covered. There's no getting in there.
I will take your comments to others. Do you have any other comments?
I will take action. May not be what they like. No, I clean it myself. That's ridiculous.
Well, I don't know any of you saw that. Of course, I must commend, Betty's husband works with us on these ceremonies, and of course his love and desire, both he and Betty, is the Beirut ceremony. But at the before the Patriot Day ceremony, Charles brought a guy out there and literally took his own clippers and was clipping the shrubs out there before the ceremony. Yeah, it was an interesting time. Anyway.
All right. As previously mentioned, we will not have our main regular meeting in January. It will just be subcommittee. So the chairs of the committees, please contact your people so we can go ahead and give Glenn and Carmela a heads up so they can make something happen. And then our next meeting in here will be Thursday, February the 6th at 6 o'clock.
And the reason Carmela's not here is because obviously she has the youth council this time, so she's across the street with, she just texted me, said she's got a huge crowd over there tonight, so that's a good thing.
Very good.
So, and we're very happy to have Miss Hargett's husband here with us this evening too. And always we're grateful to Carla for her attention to us.
All right, I hope everybody has a very Merry Christmas, and see you guys in
February 2014.
Angela, did you want to say something? Do you have a motion to adjourn? Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.